Voting for Pika's Best Radio Station is on and underway. If you've already voted for The Point, thank you. If not, there's still time to get yours in. We're honored that many of you have nominated us again, and we'll keep looking for ways to keep you informed, up to date, and entertained. Fox News, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie and all the great talk shows from around the USA. Tell a friend and share your votes with all The Point's super advertisers. Thanks from all the stations of Choice Broadcasting.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Their one and only debate. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Democratic challenger Charlie Crist squared off Monday night. Crist blasting DeSantis for going to a football game Friday night before Hurricane Ian hit the state's west coast.
Didn't encourage Lee County to evacuate. And as a result, 100 people lose their lives. That's not a good record, and that's not good leadership.
DeSantis pointing out that Crist was in Puerto Rico at the time of the hurricane.
And then when he got back, what did he do? His campaign was soliciting campaign contributions from storm victims. That is unacceptable.
The two traded barbs over the pandemic, immigration, abortion, and gender transition surgeries. Crist also challenged DeSantis to promise, if reelected, to serve his full 4 years as governor rather than run for president. DeSantis brushed off the challenge and hit back by vowing to put Crist out to pasture. The country's latest school shooting leaves a St. Louis student and teacher dead.
One is a 61-year-old white female. She was transported and pronounced at a local hospital. The second is a 16-year-old black female. She remained on the scene and was pronounced there.
Police Chief Michael Sachs says cops shot and killed the gunman, 19-year-old Orlando Harris, but not before Harris killed those two people and wounded 7 others. Hours after the shooting, the White House again calling on the Senate to pass an assault weapons ban. An AP NORC poll shows nearly 2/3 of Americans feel the U.S. government is not doing enough to fight climate change. And that, as respondents admit, they have limited to no awareness of President Biden's and Democrats' sweeping new law that commits the U.S. to its largest ever investment to combat global warming. America's listening to Fox News.
A great humanitarian once said that the difference between a career politician and a leader is the politician cares about the number of years served, and the leader just cares about serving. This defines Senator Chris Duenas. He is a seasoned statesman whose focus has always been on being a champion for the masses and a fighter for the truth. Re-elect Senator Chris Duenas, speaking up for you.
I am Chris Duenas, and I approve this message.
Edward Alvarez, Treasurer.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pika's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
More evidence emerges in the double murder trial of Alex Murdaugh in South Carolina.
Prosecutors in the case say they have proof that shows disgraced lawyer Alex Murdaugh allegedly waited an hour to call 911 after arriving at the family's hunting lodge, where he told operators he found his wife Maggie and son Paul with gunshot wounds last summer just after 10 p.m. the night of the crime. According to local reports, the new evidence came from a private investigator who was monitoring the Murdaugh's actions while investigating a case in which Murdaugh's son Paul was accused of killing a 19-year-old friend of his in a boating accident while allegedly under the influence in 2019. Prosecutors revealed the video allegedly places Alex Murdaugh at the crime scene 1 hour and 15 minutes before he called 911.
Fox's Laura Ingle. North and South Korea exchange warning shots.
The neighbors share a tense land border stretching roughly 150 miles and a sea boundary, and that's where the incident took place. South Korea's Navy issued alerts and fired warning shots to repel a North Korean merchant ship that violated the western sea boundary. North Korea's military says its defense units responded by firing 10 rounds of artillery warning shots toward its territorial waters where naval enemy movement was detected. The sea boundary has led to long-running animosity. The border has been in question since the end of the Korean War. CJ Papa, Fox News.
Broadway is going back to the future.
Set your destination date to June 30th, 2023, because BTTFB Way is arriving on Broadway at the Winter Garden Theater. Tony Award winner Roger Bart is slated to star as Doc Brown, with English actor Hugh Coles playing George McFly, reprising their roles from the show's West End version. No word yet on who will play Marty McFly. Lauren Faulkner, Fox News.
And the Dow closes at its highest level in 6 weeks. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Hafide Guam, this is Senator Amanda Shelton. The 2022 general election is right around the corner on November 8th, and early voting has begun. Curbside and in-office voting are available Tuesday through Friday from 10 to 6 at the Westin in Tumon, and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at satellite locations until November 3rd. Please bring a valid Guam ID, and I humbly ask for the honor of one of your votes. Seduus Ma'asi.
Paid for by the Committee to Elect Amanda Shelton, number 6 Democrat, Johnny Kultura's Treasurer.
Reggae in Paradise. Let's vibe out to some of the hottest Irie vibes on all your playlists. Join the vibes on November 19th at Paseo Stadium. It's on a Saturday, and we have an amazing lineup of artists. Mixed Plate, Bubba B, Fantasia, The John Dank Show, Kimmy A. Minor, Liquid Jordy, High Water, and Rebel Sojas. Get your tickets now at guamtime.net. What are you waiting for? Presenting sponsors, big thanks to Riga Royal, IT&E, White Claw, GVB, Gasolina, Linda's Diner, and Empire Media and Entertainment. Saturday, November 19th, Reggae in Paradise. We'll see you there.
Congratulations to public school teachers who received a raise this year. The increase was long overdue and well-deserved. It is just unfortunate that it had to become an election tactic of the current administration. As it was during Governor Camacho's tenure, we will make schools safe, secure, and conducive for learning for our students. No pandering, no vote buying, just prioritizing our island's children. It's time for a new season.
I'm Felix Camacho.
I'm Tony Adams.
We approve this message.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia be necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Tall Tales. This week is a shortened week for myself and Daryl.
For me in particular.
You in particular, because you're heading out on Thursday. We are anticipating the return of our esteemed host, Bob Klitzkie, the tall of Tall Tales.
The tall.
The tall, who has plenty more tales than I have. Tales. Just in case those of you are not paying attention.
He's not the one with the tail.
No, I don't have a tail either. But I'm here in the studio with Daryl Taggarty. We're going to bring you some great stuff today because it is Tall Tales, and you joined us. I want to return back to the Samoa versus Samoa piece that I was reading yesterday because there's some great stuff in there. We'll get around to that. But let's go to Jemmy Cutney. Our version, Tall Tales version of Meet the Press, where we press the meat that comes out of our editorial boards from our two local publications. The Post has gone full vegetarian, where they have nothing to press, nothing to opine on, no opining on the opining of an editorial board from the Guam Daily Post. We do have editorials coming out of the Pacific Daily News. So far, they've been posting. Every now and then, once or twice, they'll post something that's really good or publish something that's really biting. And Bob has the blue pen where he issues out stars. He hasn't been doing it lately. There is a running tally. The Post, ironically, has 262 blue stars when they were doing editorials.
Resting on their laurels.
The Guam PDN has 82. But there's also been a number of individuals who've received blue stars as well. And that would be Lee Weber, Helen Middlebrook, and Troy Torres. And all columnists, Troy Torres of Candid News, of course, who's written some very good, hard-biting articles / editorials.
Biting the meat.
Biting the meat. So there's lots there. Today is just another PSA from the PDN. If you want to read it, you can go to it, pick up a copy, talking about job training, job fairs, new careers, yada, yada, yada. You can
It's because you're not looking.
But, I mean, even if I was looking, I don't think it's airplay worthy or even editorial worthy. I, again, appreciate the PSA, but we should have something that at least a little bit more biting, especially since it's
campaign time.
Hello. What's going on, PDN? Nothing to write about? There's so much good stuff going on out there, so much you can be talking about, editorializing on.
Maybe they just want the ads.
Maybe they just want the access. Yeah, I said it.
Or they're lining themselves up for their own jobs in the next administration.
There you go. Funny, they don't post that here in this PSA, but I digress. You would think they want opportunities for everybody.
And you'd think that they would go ahead and display their talent while they're getting paid to do this
Here we're pressing
job.
the press. That's what this segment is, pressing the press. Bob had sent me an editorial, though. Fret not, true believers. It is from our esteemed, I want to say colleague, because we do talk a lot, mention a lot of his opinion pieces, his columns, or his articles, and this is from Jonathan Turley, of course, talking about what's been going on recently with Dr. Fauci and the White House. And you're saying, what do you mean recently? And we're talking about recently exposed, recently revealed, recently being open to the public of what happened, or the conversations between him, the White House, and social media corporations. So without further ado, from Jonathan Turley, Fauci and White House officials ordered to testify in social media censorship case. Now, the beginning of every program of Tall Tales, Bob reads from the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment. And this one opines on the First Amendment and the right to free speech. You remember, the Bill of Rights is not given to us from the government. It's a list of rights that the government cannot take away from us. Keep that in mind. The first 10 amendments of the Bill of Rights. Let me see here. Just want to log in real quick to. Oh. Nope, that's not where I'm logging into. So Fauci and White House officials, ordered to testify in social media censorship case. There is an interesting development out of a case in Louisiana where a federal judge has ruled that Dr. Anthony Fauci and White House officials must testify in a case alleging a back channel for censorship on social media. The complaint in Schmidt versus Biden in the District Court for the Western District of Louisiana alleges that Facebook and Twitter coordinated their censorship programs with government officials. I have previously written about what some of us view as a censorship by surrogate system used on social media. This discovery could help understand some of those back channel contacts. Judge Terry Dowdy granted a request to require Fauci, the former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, and Surgeon General Vivek Murthy and others to sit under oath for up to 7 hours each. Just an aside, Daryl, do you think it's coincidental that former White House Press Secretary's name is Jen Psaki? Never mind.
I didn't. There's got to be a sound effect for that.
Yeah, there's a silent T there somewhere. As discussed earlier, social media companies have created the largest censorship system in history. For years, anti-free speech figures have dismissed free speech objections to social media censorship by stressing that the First Amendment applies only to the government and not private companies. The distinction was always a dishonest effort to evade the implications of speech controls, whether implemented by the government or corporations. The First Amendment was never the exclusive definition of free speech. Free speech is viewed by many of us as a human right. The First Amendment only deals with one source for limiting it. Free speech can be undermined by private corporations as well as government agencies. This threat is even greater when politicians openly use corporations to achieve indirectly what they cannot achieve directly. We have recently seen evidence supporting the suspicions of a censorship by surrogate. The recently disclosed exchange between defendant Carol Crawford, the CDC's chief of digital media, revealed a back channel with Twitter and other companies to censor unapproved opinions on social media. The tricky part may be due to the fact that during the week of March 25th, 2021, then CEO Jack Dorsey was testifying on such censorship before Congress and insisting that we don't have a censoring department. It seems that any meeting on systemic censorship with the government would have to wait until after Dorsey denied that such systemic censorship existed. The exchange is part of the evidence put forward by leading doctors who are alleging a systemic private government effort to censor dissenting scientific or medical views. The lawsuit filed by Missouri and Louisiana was joined by experts, including Drs. Jahenta Bachara and Martin Kuldroff, both the first of Stanford University and the latter of Harvard University. Bhattacharya objected this week to the suspension of Dr. Claire Craig after she raised concerns about Pfizer trial documents. Those doctors were the co-authors of the Great Barrington Declaration, which advocated for a more focused COVID response that targeted the most vulnerable population rather than widespread lockdowns and mandates. Many are now questioning the efficacy and cost of the massive lockdown, as well as the real value of masks or the rejection of natural immunities as an alternative to vaccination. Yet these experts and others were attacked for such views just a year ago. Some found themselves censored on social media for challenging claims of Dr. Fauci and others. The Great Barrington Declaration was not the only viewpoint deemed dangerous. Those who alleged that the virus may have begun in a lab in China were widely denounced and the views barred from being uttered on social media platforms. It was later learned that a number of leading experts raised this theory with Fauci and others early in the pandemic. Fauci is accused of quickly scuttling such discussion, and critics point to his own alleged approval of gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab. Fauci and other leading experts now admit that the lab theory is a real possibility, even if they do not agree that it is the best explanation. Social media companies like Facebook declared that the previously banned conspiracy theory would now be allowed to be discussed. Yet some of the media continue to push the media to avoid discussing it. The New York Times science writer Apurva Mandavili declared the theory racist, even as Fauci and others were saying that it is now considered a possible explanation. Indeed, many of the views that the media attacked as conspiracy theories or debunked are now again being seriously considered. That includes claims of adverse responses to the vaccines, natural immunity protection, and the psychological costs from masking or isolation, particularly among children. And none of these views are inviolate or beyond question any more than the official accounts were at the time. Rather, they systematically disappeared from social media, pushed to the far extremes of public and academic discourse. While the CDC now admits that it made serious mistakes during the pandemic, it allegedly worked with companies to ban opposing views. Those who sought to raise these questions found their accounts suspended. There is every reason that for the CDC to combat what it considers a false, there is every reason for the CDC to combat what it considers false information through its own postings and outreach programs. However, the involvement in censoring dissenting views is deeply troubling. And that brings us back to the tricky part. The request for the meeting was made on March 18th, 2021. That week, Dorsey and other CEOs were to appear at a House hearing to discuss misinformation on social media and their content modification policies. I had just testified on private censorship in circumnavigating the First Amendment as a type of censorship by surrogate. Dorsey and other CEOs were asked about my warning of a little brother problem, a problem which private entities do for the government, which it cannot legally do for itself. Dorsey insisted there was no such censorship office or effort. The new lawsuit sheds new light on that testimony. It now appears that the CDC was actively feeding disapproved viewpoints to these companies, including a list of tweets that the CDC regarded as misinformation. In one email, Twitter Senior Manager for Public Policy, Todd O'Boyle, asked Crawford to identify tweets to be censored and emphasized that the company was looking forward to setting up regular chats. Facebook also received lists of offensive posts to be dealt with. Facebook trained government officials in using its crowd tangle system used by health departments to flag potential vaccine misinformation to allow the company to review and possibly remove it. It added that this is similar to how governments and fact checkers use crowd tangle ahead of elections. This was another eye-raising reference since these companies were criticized for killing the Hunter Biden laptop story before the election. The story was blocked as presumed Russian disinformation, a move that Dorsey admitted in the March hearing was a mistake. Now, a year later, the story is accepted not just as legitimate, but potentially a serious threat for the Biden administration. Whatever the outcome of the litigation, the filing raises again whether our concept of state censorship and state media are outmoded. The last few years have seen a striking uniformity in that barring of certain political and policy viewpoints, including dissenting medical or scientific views that could potentially protect lives. That occurred without any central Ministry of Information or coercive state laws. It was done by mutual agreement and shared values between the government and these companies. What was not known were the moving parts in what had been arguably the most successful censorship system in our history. To some extent, no direction was needed beyond the periodic announcements of figures like Fauci or the CDC, which were treated as gospel and not to be challenged. Even when Fauci was criticized for reversing himself on key issues like the wearing of masks or their efficacy, it did not change the concerted effort to suppress opposing views. The tricky part for the public is how to deal with the circumvention of the First Amendment in a system of censorship by surrogates. This and other cases could well help in understanding the scope of this problem and the possible options in protecting free speech on social media.
Good article.
It is. And
good subject.
It's Jonathan Turley. Again, we gotta talk about him. He's not a diehard conservative or right-winger. From my understanding, he's a Democrat. And he's
paying attention to issues
on
that
the facts
are being
itself.
brought up
Right.
in, admittedly, it's a court in Louisiana.
Right.
But it has national implications.
They usually start in the smaller courts, move up, and the Supreme Court hears the bigger cases after they go through some of the appeals process. But yeah, it's again very interesting that we are now seeing this stuff now. What is being done about it? A lot of people are dismissing it. Jonathan Turley is not dismissing it. And obviously this judge said that there's enough there to rule that these officials must testify, and it's not to apply guilt or innocence. It's discovery, it's trying to figure out what's going on, and testifying is one way that we can understand greatly how this surrogacy spun its web, and seemingly how we can what we can do about it. It's incredible that this doesn't generate enough outrage. It's almost like we accept how bad the government treats us, like we're wounded, abused people, and I think we are. And there needs to be enough people, and it doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you are in politics. We have to be able to stand up and say, enough with the censoring or the filtering information. We have social media now where we wouldn't be getting information as fast as we do now. And sometimes we have enough people out there who have a voice and a platform to say, hey, wait a second, there could be another perspective or viewpoint on this issue that our regular legacy media is not reaching out.
But that's the opportunity. In the open free market of ideas, there are other outlets that can carry that information, and we're free to access them.
Yes, so
it's
that's
not
theoretical.
It's not a blanket censorship across all.
But that's easy. Easy to say.
Only these companies.
That's easy to say as a theory. But when you have the major companies like Twitter that are very influential, like Facebook, which is very influential, like the legacy media, which is very influential, we have a problem when there's a surrogacy from the government telling them or suggesting, highly suggesting, or even intertwining with some of their personnel what to say and what to omit. And that's I've had enough of that, and I think you have too in other aspects. I'm sure everybody else has, but what are we going to do about it?
We're going to keep the government from influencing our news.
Like, it's just really incredible.
Or influencing editorial content.
I have a subscription to National Geographic. I also have a subscription to the Disney Channel, which I think Disney owns National Geographic, or at least is able to publish stuff. But it's amazing the amount of Fauci information, like biographies and long articles and photo biographies that are done on him as if he's some sort of savior on this earth. And I'm like, wow, this is really too much, people. And he's a government official that we haven't even, in the public eye, vetted as much as I think we ought to have. But I think we ought to be careful, and we have to be able to accept information. And yeah, there is disinformation out there all the time, but we're pretty good privately at debunking it, and we watch out for each other too. How many times on WhatsApp have you seen danger? Don't follow this phone number or go onto this link, or, things like that. But we don't have to have the government tell us to do that. We know when something's bad. But people are allowed to do it. But when you have the government intervening like that, it's incredible. Even here on Guam, where a doctor who says something that's alternative to the narrative in the physician's advisory group is now resigning. We hear that he resigned, but how much of that was pressure to resign because you're not pushing the narrative?
Well, he was selected as the head of the physician's advisory group, and then he spoke not as a member, but as a private physician. As a physician, he spoke out, but he was still. That's the narrative they want you to repeat. But the truth was, it was on record. He said, we never said this, and they said that they did, and he countered what the governor said the next day, and that's why he ended up on the cutting room floor, because he wasn't needed anymore for actually saying something that was truthful. Actually, he said it candidly. He didn't say this is my private opinion. He said this is what we decided, and we decided not to do this, but they went ahead anyways. Should the governor be required to have dissenting views within her own appointees?
That's up to her. That's up to her. But
and that's why he was invited to go out the door.
And how many times did the media go after him for opinion afterwards? Probably their surrogacy told them it's not a good idea. But I digress. Let's move on to the card. Actually, let's take a real quick break. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. We'll be back to causing more trouble after this break.
We're already Pika's best radio station,
and we want to keep it that way. Voting for Pika's best radio station is on and underway. If you've already voted for the point, thank you. If not, there's still time to get yours in. We're honored that many of you have nominated us again, and we'll keep looking for ways to keep you informed, up to date, and entertained. Fox News, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie and all the great talk shows from around the USA. Tell a friend and share your votes with all the Point's super advertisers. Thanks from all the stations of choice broadcasting.
Reggae in Paradise. Let's vibe out to some of the hottest Irie vibes on all your playlists. Join the vibes on November 19th at Paseo Stadium. It's on a Saturday, and we have an amazing lineup of artists. Mix Fate, Bubba B, Fantasia, The John Dank Show, Kimmy A. Minor, Liquid Jordy, High Water, and Rebel Sojas. Get your tickets now at guamtime.net. What are you waiting for? Presenting sponsors, big thanks to Riga Royal, IT&E, White Claw, GVB, Gasolina, Linda's Diner, and Empire Media and Entertainment. Saturday, November 19th, Reggae in Paradise. We'll see you there.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
And welcome back to Tall Tales. My name is Jose Martinez. I am going to go to the card next, but if you are watching the live stream on Facebook or YouTube, you'll see that I have posted the I'm a Tailgater Tall Tales t-shirt. You too can get your own I'm a Tailgater Tall Tales t-shirt by going to the link on www.thepoint.gu. And the link to the t-shirt is on that webpage, on that site. That's our official The Point website, where you can get everything The Point, even the schedule of all our programs, including the network programming that we have, and much more information, lots of other information. There might be even a link to go to vote for Pika's Best, because The Point was elected or selected by you, the listener, as Pika's Best Radio Station 2021, and we are in the running again for Pika's Best 2022. So don't forget to go to Pika's Best or Best of on GuamPDN.com and vote for your radio station, The Point. Now back to, we're going to get to the card. Thank you, Daryl. First off, we have Paul Zerzan versus Systemic Racism. And we had a couple of examples of the systemic racism, the narrative, just from Jemmy Cutney, where Paul Zerzan says, your red rice is really orange, and systemic racism says, how dare you? Our rice is red and has always been red, and it says so in my DNA. Public Law 3634. I want to get to that because, there's a lot of good agendas out there that are posted. They're following Public Law 3634. But I want to read this one because I think it's interesting. I'm very interested and wonder if we'll be invited. Okay, I have to click on my link. Oh, no, I didn't want to go there. What I wanted, there we go. The Port of Guam has a meeting on October 27th. That's this Thursday at 3 p.m. And new business, number one, request for $15,000 for employee incentive events, Thanksgiving and Christmas holiday luncheon. Daryl, what can you get for $15,000 in employee incentive events?
really happy employees.
Right? Where does this $15,000 come from?
Could be donations. It could be sales. It could be the proceeds from the soda machines.
Mm-hmm.
It could be associations, employee association donations. $2 or $5 a paycheck that are dropped into the common kitty. There are agency.
Could be all that, but because this was posted by law on the agenda, and I want to thank the Port of Guam for doing this. If you have the same curiosity as Daryl and I do, you can attend this meeting. You can attend it via Zoom. This is what the law was for, so that we see what's going to be discussed. And if we have any questions or we have any curiosities or issues with what's on the agenda, we can attend because we know what's going to be discussed.
Well, the board has the power to use some discretionary fund that it has budgeted for itself.
Sure. And I'm not disputing it because I know a lot of agencies do. I mean, look at
Autonomous
the Guam
agencies do.
Look at the Guam Labor Day picnic, right? You look at that and go, man, that's a lot of money. Where did that come from? Well, we know that most of that is done by fundraising that they do, the agencies do.
And donations from the employees themselves.
Right. But again, I'm just putting it out there because it did say $15,000. That's a really nice spread. But how many employees do you think they have?
For one agency.
For one agency. I just want to know if we're invited, the public. Okay, enough of...
it's a port.
Enough of 3634. On the card, we have, we already read it, Fauci in the White House versus free speech, social media. We have Guam pro-abortion doctors versus their own shadow, and that's a letter to the editor by Tim Rohr. I'm going to read it in a very good letter to the editor, it could also be called Tim Rohr versus the Guam pro-abortion doctors. We have ACLU versus informed consent, where they seemingly equate open heart surgery to the termination of a helpless, innocent human being. We're going to part 2 of Samoa versus Samoa and continue that really good article. And then a couple of leftovers, Social Security versus Mother Nature. And then the woke military. That's the subject. I want to call it trans loyalty versus loyalty. And then Calamity Jane, if we get to it, versus the storyteller in chief. Let's finish up with Samoa versus Samoa. We were reading the article that came out from Civil Beat in Hawaii that I thought did a very good job in getting quotes and opinions from both sides, especially the side we don't hear from enough from, and that's from American Samoa themselves. I'm talking about the island nation, not the individuals. Where I last left off, I was reading about potential changing cultural practices, and let me just reread starting from there. Charles Ala Iliama, an American Samoan attorney who helped represent Fitzsiumanu and other. Oh, just for those who aren't aware, Fitzsiumanu is the name of the plaintiff. United States was the defendant, and he was challenging the courts in the sense that he wanted a pathway to American citizenship because although he was born on U.S. territory, which is America Samoa itself, because he was born in America Samoa, he is a U.S. national, something that America Samoa had negotiated with the U.S. Congress when they entered into agreement to be a U.S. territory a long time ago. And the process to become a citizenship is there, but you have to go through immigration, the pathway that other immigrants have to go through. And so that was the court case. They were denied or denied. They went on appeal all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court had a chance to hear the case and decided not to hear the case, and essentially said that the lower court's ruling stands. So here, Charles Ala Iliama, an American Samoan attorney who helped represent Fitzsimonu and other plaintiffs, contends that the concerns of changing cultural practices are overblown. He doesn't think U.S. citizenship needs to be a barrier to maintaining a cultural practice and limiting land ownership. Residents of the Northern Mariana Islands, another U.S. territory, limit land ownership, but also receive birthright citizenship. He thinks that American Samoan cultural practices can still be justified under the U.S. Constitution. He said the local communal land ownership system is already threatened by local chiefs who want to put land in their own names. Now, I'm just going to opine, he is not wrong here. American Samoa cultural practices can still be justified under the U.S. Constitution and alongside with birthright citizenship as long as American Samoa petitions for it in front of Congress. And Congress has to do the ones that change it, not the court systems. Because CNMI was able to do it. The individualization of land here is occurring and has nothing to do with citizenship, Ala Iliama said. Alga and others contend that the court isn't the right venue for granting birthright citizenship. Cruz, author of Pacific Insular Case of America Samoa, says other U.S. territories have received U.S. citizenship following local plebiscites that voiced vocal support for the idea and said American Samoans should decide whether that's the route they want to go, not the Supreme Court. She said that what's at stake goes beyond the communal land system and includes the fact that the local Senate is composed entirely of chiefs rather than democratically elected officials. She believes if the American Samoan people want U.S. birthright citizenship, they'll demand a vote on it. The issue hasn't been brought up in a plebiscite because there is no overarching desire to have a closer relationship with America, she said. AGA noted America Samoa has had three political status commissions in 1970, 1979, and 2006. He helped lead the one in 2006 and says there wasn't a strong appetite then or now to change the territory's political status. Our relationship with the U.S. is all important, he said. At the same time, or even equally important, is our deep desire to protect what is our heritage. Instead of granting birthright citizenship to everyone in America Samoa, Ratawagan wants Congress to make it easier for U.S. nationals to get citizenship. Again, Ratawagan is the elected representative or delegate to the U.S. Congress out of America Samoa, and who was a guest here on Tall Tales. She called in. She also went to UOG here on Guam for a while, and she said that she was herself and America Samoans are not interested in the courts overturning the insular cases. Instead of granting birthright citizenship to everyone in America Samoa, Ratawagan wants Congress to instead make it easier for U.S. nationals to get citizenship. She introduced a bill last year that would get rid of the requirement that American Samoans move to another U.S. jurisdiction to get citizenship. Currently, American Samoans must establish residency for at least 3 months before they can apply for naturalization, which involves paying fees and passing tests. But not taking up the Fitzsimonu case has ripple effects beyond America Samoa. The Supreme Court is effectively leaving in place the case law that's used to justify treating residents of U.S. territories differently, even when they are U.S. citizens. Earlier this year, the court ruled against Puerto Rican residents who wanted the right to Social Security disability insurance, which residents of U.S. states have the right to receive. Neil Weir, who works with Ali Lima at the nonprofit Equally American that represented Fitzsimonu and other plaintiffs, said all territories are affected by Monday's decision and the lack of clarity around the applicability of the Constitution to U.S. territories. The Supreme Court left unresolved the question whether people born in U.S. territories have any right to citizenship at all, Weir said. Completely false. Are you a citizen, Daryl?
A right to citizenship?
A right to citizenship.
I am.
Were you born here on Guam?
I was born in Buffalo, New York.
Okay, you were a citizen. I was born in California. Do people born on Guam considered or legally U.S. citizens?
Since 1950, because of a congressional law.
Okay.
It's not a right.
So, well, same thing.
No, it's not. It's not the same thing. It's not a right.
Okay.
It is
Even
a
if
policy.
Okay, even if they change that later on down the road, everybody who became a citizenship since 1950 or citizen,
Under the
it
law,
cannot be taken away from them.
No, once you have it, it's yours.
Right.
But the
point is, Neil
citizenship
Weir is wrong
here
in this case.
can be changed by Congress.
Yes.
Citizenship cannot, but the policy of conferring citizenship upon birth on Guam can be repealed. It's simply a policy.
Correct. But Neil Weir is wrong, and he's saying it affects all territories because it doesn't in this sense.
That's right. It's not a right. It's a policy under the territorial clause.
Okay, now I lost my place. Okay, Monday's decision was particularly disappointing to Weir, Fitzsimonu, Ala Ilima, and others because Supreme Court Justice Neil Grosh this year indicated his desire to overrule the insular cases. That's not true. Okay, someone told me, Jose, stop opining in between the paragraphs, but it's so hard not to when there's just blatant myth truths in these sentences, and they're not even corrected. But that's okay. I'm going to read them anyways. Justice Sonia Sotomayor criticized them as well, and that is true. But that wasn't enough to sway the court because she wasn't interested in overturning them at all either. They didn't put that in there. We've been saying for a while now that it's clear that America has colonies problem, and that almost even worse, the U.S. refuses to recognize, much less address that. Today's inaction by the Supreme Court is just another data point towards that end, Weir said. Weir said that his organization is deliberating on whether to appeal another case to the Ninth Circuit that seeks to establish absentee voting rights for plaintiffs living in Guam and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Vicente Borja, lead plaintiff in that case, Borja versus Nago, was a Hawaii resident who moved to Guam and was unable to vote absentee in Hawaii for president. Is this the same Vicente Borja that's running for office?
I don't know.
I'm interested to know. I mean, we have a lot of Vicente Borjas.
Well, this is
not just
the
here.
one who's running is Vince.
Vince, okay, not Vicente. Never, not even. I would have to call the GEC to see if there's also a Vicente listed under Vince Borja. But
how many of them are there?
Well, the only reason why I say is because I know. Anyways,
it's a lawyer. You're talking about a lawyer.
No, this is a plaintiff.
No, I know, but the lawyer,
Okay, who was a Hawaii resident who moved to Guam and was unable to vote absentee in Hawaii for president. Okay.
If he was military connected, he could.
No, but they're using an example of someone who was born on Guam, went to Hawaii, and then came back here, established
residence there,
and then came back here, established residency, or it can't. Came to Guam and can't vote.
Came to Guam, and he couldn't get an absentee ballot, even though he was a legal resident of Hawaii.
Right. But that is again something that I think Congress has to look at because they're the ones that set that policy up for anyone.
Overseas Americans.
Yeah, and I forgot what the name of that
it doesn't
act
apply
was.
To the territories.
To the territories, right. And that...
Again, a policy.
But see, what's interesting is that this has nothing to do with racism. This has to do with location and policy, just like against what they're claiming in this article that it's about racism. Because guess who else cannot vote?
Was that a lawyer who said that?
Huh?
Was that a lawyer who said that? No.
About
Weir, right?
Yeah, Weir.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you think he makes his money? Arguing one side of an issue in court. He makes a living at it. He pays his rent.
It doesn't help Daryl when you pull back the curtain too early in the play.
We've been talking about Neil Weir for months. He's a lawyer.
It's too early in the play, but the wizard hasn't been exposed yet. So he says people in territories.
Him a wizard?
People in the territories, grand wizard. People in the territories can't vote for president and have no voting representation in Congress. And also, Supreme Court justices are nominated by a president whom residents of the territories can't vote for and confirmed by a Senate in which they have no representation, Weir said. So the deck is pretty well stacked against people in the territories, and this is just another example of that. Well, if you want to view stacks with one eye and only see one stack, then yeah, it would seem like it's decked. But if you open up your other eye and you'll see there's another deck that's not so much stacked against us that other states have to contend with. And I don't think that he understands that we don't live in a one-dimensional world.
He understands that.
Okay,
he just
I know.
makes his money at it.
Stop pulling back the curtain. Yeah, but you're exactly right, though.
Don't call him a grand wizard.
He's not so grand anymore. Aga from America Samoa agrees that insular cases are problematic. Systemic racism, that's why. But I digress because I don't know his mindset. But believes something needs to be ready to replace them that will actively protect American Samoan customs if the cases are going to be overturned. We became something of a pawn in that effort to overturn the insular cases, and so it's a relief that it didn't reach the Supreme Court, he said. And that's the end of that article. Yeah, Equally American is a nonprofit, I think tank or something like that takes on these cases. But there is money to be made, of course, because the people running it can't just run it and live off of it. And they do work off donations, and you see a lot of it solicitation. So it bears the questioning, which came first, the chicken or the egg, the case or Equally America? Mm-hmm.
It had to be Equally American because they brought the case.
Which sustains, yeah. So it looks like he has another case in his pocket, in his arsenal.
It works, doesn't it? He's doing fine.
Exactly. So this is the reason why people need to hear these stories, hear the exposure of this, because it is very interesting that that sometimes we have there's no ambulance involved, but sometimes it seems like it's ambulance chasing. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG. We're going to go to a break real quick. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more Tall Tales.
A great humanitarian once said that the difference between a career politician and a leader is the politician cares about the number of years served, and the leader just cares about serving. This defines Senator Chris Duenas. He is a seasoned statesman whose focus has always been on being a champion for the masses and a fighter for the truth. Re-elect Senator Chris Duenas, speaking up for you.
I am Chris Duenas, and I approve this message.
Edward Alvarez, Treasurer.
I'm Dr. Sama Bini Young. I've served as a senator and director of labor. I'm also an entrepreneur and educator. As your senator, I will prioritize the training and education of students and workers to support the rebuilding of our economy. I understand our community's needs for affordable living and housing, and the need for aggressive drug enforcement to stop its serious impact. And there's a need for smarter and smaller government, like a part-time legislature that works for Guam and having more efficient GovGuam departments. Please support me with one of your votes for senator to work for you on these issues. I'm Dr. Sama Bini Young.
Paid for by friends of Sama Bini Young. Gina Ramos, Treasurer.
And we are back. Put the camera back on. You're listening to KUSG 93.3 FM. The program is Tall Tales. And we just finished up the Samoa versus Samoa case. I see the phone keeps ringing. I do recognize that number. Caller, it's just that your call or whatever's happening is not getting through. Daryl is answering the call. Yeah, I'm trying to find some other pieces here. Just for...
That's the third time that call came in, but when I answer, there's nobody there, and I don't know if it's his phone or our phone.
It's probably his phone if it's having problems. Well, you know what? That's a good question. We'll fix that after the big halftime show because that's happened before as well. I'm going to go to, this wasn't on the card because I wasn't sure if I was going to get to it, but I just want to, of course, I probably got rid of it already. Aha. This is the letter to the editor that Ken Leon-Guerrero had put in, and I think he listed some things that are very curious and begs to be asked. Whether or not the everything's legitimate is not the case. The case has to be, what are they telling us, and what is being revealed, what is being transparent or available to us as far as information. And this has to do with the hospital. Letter, building a new hospital in 3 to 4 years is political nonsense. I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
No, he doesn't. Bad news needs to be revealed.
Okay, I will try not to opine between the lines here. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but just about everything Gov. Lou Leon Guerrero says about building a new hospital in 3 to 4 years is political nonsense. A careful looking at existing new hospital documents and past experiences trying to build a new Simon Sanchez High School gives voters and taxpayers a more realistic view. After all, it has been more than 10 years since the government decided to build a new school, and the government hasn't even finished drawing the final plans yet. There will be a lot of opposition to building a hospital on Route 15, and that'll take years to overcome if opposition is ever overcome. Just look at efforts to build a waste-to-energy plant in Santa Rita, Sumai, that has been stalled by public opposition for nearly 20 years. Sorry.
I just had to break in because we just got another phone call and there was nobody there, so I think it's our phones.
Yeah, we'll fix it. I know the fix on it, but we'll do it after the big halftime show. So please call in if you're trying to call in the next hour, please. There will be lots of opposition. Oh, excuse me, let's go. The government still does not have control of the land. The land has not had the kind of soil testing needed, nor has the Environmental Protection Agency site evaluation been done to even begin designing a building. That type of site analysis and testing could take between 18 months and 3 years based on a review of similar government land evaluations filed with U.S. EPA. Once a site is confirmed and approved by EPA, the design process alone can take up to 5 years, according to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Explanation of the process in the news conference held about the public engagement charrette process back in 2021. Before any construction on the site can begin, if plans are ever finalized, there will be years of infrastructure improvements that will have to be made, costing hundreds of millions of dollars. Water, power, and sewage systems will need to be improved first before road improvements can begin. Both routes 10 and 15 will need to be widened and improved from Route 10 all the way to Gigo to allow endless parade of heavy equipment that will be traveling to and from equipment yards, quarries, cement plants, and construction yards on a daily basis, and to allow rapid transit of emergency vehicles if the hospital ever opens. The government can't afford the cost of a new hospital. Based on the 2021 numbers, the government is looking at a lease payment of $60 million a year for 40 years. That is just $2.4 billion on a building after we make a $300 million down payment. That $60 million a year is an expense the government does not have operating the current GMH facility. There will be a $150 a year operating costs on top of the $60 million a year lease payment, making the total annual operating budget more than $200 million a year for an operation that collects around $90 million in revenue, operating at a $40 million to $50 million a year deficit with revenue shortages coming out of the taxpayer pockets. If politicians had to pay for their policy mistakes out of their own pockets instead of passing the buck to taxpayers, I submit the Army Corps of Engineers' suggestion to spend $21 million to fix the structural problems at the current hospital over risking their own personal money on the plans for a new hospital to get a lot more political support. He makes a lot of sense, and it's not
usually does.
And it's not really opining on what he feels about the hospital. I mean, these are pretty much timeline numbers. And if we go by numbers, we know that there's no way that a building like that and an operation like that can happen in 3 years.
Well, the thing is if you take the long view, if you say, okay, well, you know, we're going to have 200,000 people here once the military buildup is done in 5 years, and because not only will the service members be here, but all the support services have to will be ramped up, and people will come to bring skills that we don't have on island. And they're going to be buying up houses. They're going to be buying up land. There's going to be it's going to be basically a boom town. And our tourism will be back. And if we miscalculate, then yeah, we'll go ahead and just let the feds take over like they did in Puerto Rico. And because it's a federal island anyway. So you know, there's ways to look at this.
Yes, but I think the one singular view that Adelup has taken is might not be the best way right now. And
it's a way, right? It's not. It's not the best way, but it is a way.
They haven't been talking about it though. I wonder why.
It's campaign time.
Thank you. We are here. You are listening to Tall Tales on KUSG 93.3 FM. We'll be right back after the big halftime show. We're going to call our text to fix this phone, and we will be taking your phone calls on the other side of the break. So please don't go away.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
American students targeted again. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. A gunman opened fire inside a high school in South St. Louis Monday, terrifying students.
Then when I started hearing gunshots, panic set into my heart, and we had like kids that were crying and stuff.
Police Chief Michael Sachs says the gunman in the country's latest school shooting killed a teacher and a student and wounded 7 others.
The suspect in this incident is Orlando Harris. He's a black male, 19 years of age, and graduated from the high school last year. He lives in the 9,000 block of Pennsylvania with family members, and he has no prior criminal history.
Police shot and killed Harris inside the school. Meantime, in Michigan, a school shooter changes his plea.
Ethan Crumbly withdraws his insanity plea, telling a judge in Oakland County Court Monday that he's guilty of all 24 counts against him, including murder, assault with intent to commit murder, and terror. In the mass shooting at Oxford High School last year that left 4 students dead and 7 others hurt. During the plea hearing, Crumbly also told the court he got the gun used in the attack from his parents, who also face charges in the case. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
Penn State cancels an event with Proud Boys founder Gavin McInnes over threats of violence.
Ongoing protests leading to the university's decision to cancel the event over what it says was the threat of escalating violence. The university says police determined the cancellation was necessary in the interest of campus safety, adding that it finds McInnes's views abhorrent and saying that they don't align with the values of Penn State. Gary Baumgarten, Fox News.
And the Dow gained 417 points. I'm Carmen Roberts, and America's listening to Fox News.
Half a day. I'm Tom Fisher. Here's the harsh reality. A trip to the grocery store for the basics, eggs, bag of rice, butter, can of Spam, milk, costs almost $30, and that's just 5 items. The cost of living continues to grow, but the money doesn't. We need to roll back the business privilege tax to reduce Guam's cost of living, and I will make that happen.
Vote Thomas Fisher for senator. If you want different, vote different.
I'm Tom Fisher, and I approve this message.
A great humanitarian once said that the difference between a career politician and a leader is the politician cares about the number of years served, and the leader just cares about serving. This defines Senator Chris Duenas. He is a seasoned statesman whose focus has always been on being a champion for the masses and a fighter for the truth. Re-elect Senator Chris Duenas, speaking up for you.
I am Chris Duenas, and I approve this message.
Edward Alvarez, Treasurer.
The Israeli army says its forces raided and destroyed an explosives lab this morning belonging to the Lion's Den militant group in the West Bank. The Palestinian Health Ministry says the firefight killed 5 Palestinians and injured 20. A skydiver in Tennessee dies after a pre-football game jump.
Officials describing it as a hard landing before a high school football game in Jonesboro, Tennessee. The man was performing the jump into Davy Crockett High School football stadium before their game against Daniel Boone High School Friday. The skydiver was airlifted to the hospital and a moment of silence was held. The game started after a delay. Washington County School Superintendent Jerry Boyd said the skydiver was a beloved husband, father, and grandfather. Jump Tennessee said in a statement the 55-year-old worked with the company and had performed more than 1,500 jumps over decades. The company said observers and witnesses did not notice anything unusual about the fall. Mental health professionals be at both schools this week. Samantha Leapman, Fox News.
Good news for vegetarians and vegans. You may soon see more Beyond Meat options at your local grocery store.
Plant-based protein company Beyond Meat is launching a Beyond Steak line to be sold at Kroger, Albertsons, Walmart, and other grocery stores nationwide. The company says the steak tips will contain 21 grams of protein per serving with no cholesterol and no added antibiotics or hormones. The Beyond Steak comes frozen. It was designed to have the flavor and texture of sliced steak tips. The plant-based protein company also recently launched Taco Bell's Beyond Carne Asada steak, which is in the test stages. Ginny Cosola, Fox News.
And the owner of Gold's Gym, Rainer Schaller, and his family are feared dead after a private plane crash in Costa Rica. I'm Carmen Roberts. This is Fox News.
Hafa-day, I'm Amanda Shelton. It's been my greatest honor to serve as your senator. We've been able to accomplish so much during this time for our Manumku and our Manhoban, and as we turn the corner of the pandemic, I remain inspired by our island's strength and will continue serving in ways that uplift and empower our people. I humbly ask for one of your votes this election. Sidzuas Maasi.
Paid for by the committee to elect Amanda Shelton, number 6 Democrat, Johnny Coulter's treasurer.
Reggae in Paradise. Let's vibe out to some of the hottest Irie vibes on all your playlists. Join the vibes on November 19th at Paseo Stadium. It's on a Saturday and we have an amazing lineup of artists. Mix Plate, Bubba B, Fantasia, The John Dank Show, Kimmy A. Minor, Liquid Jordy, High Water, and Rebel Sojas. Get your tickets now at guamtime.net. What are you waiting for? Presenting sponsors, big thanks to Riga Royal, IT&E, White Claw, GVB, Gasolina, Linda's Diner, and Empire Media and Entertainment. Saturday, November 19th, Reggae in Paradise. We'll see you there.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. More to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
And we are back, the big halftime show featuring our infamous Rogues Gallery, the I'm a Tailgater Tall Tales T-shirt Rogues Gallery. You too can get your own T-shirt by going to thepoint.gu, clicking on the link of the guy with the beard, and clicking on the link to order the T-shirt. Order your T-shirt. When it arrives, put it on your friends, put it on your family. Take your picture, take their picture, and send it to the Points WhatsApp at 671-797-8255. And we'll add you to the rotation of the Rogues Gallery, which can be viewed streaming live on Facebook.com or on YouTube.com. If you want to find the live streams, just go to the Points Facebook page, type in the Point GU, searching for that, and you'll come to our site on Facebook. Or for Tall Tales, this program at YouTube, type in Tall Tales Guam, and we'll bring you to the YouTube stream of this program. Okay. We did finally correct the phone situation. We're able to fix it. And thus, in the agreement, we have Ken Leon Guerrero on his letter to the editor. Good afternoon, Ken, and welcome back to Tall Tales.
Thank you very much. You know, this letter is the latest in a long list of efforts going back to 2016. Since 2016, I've been trying to get the government to consider a federal receiver to take the politics out of Guam Memorial Hospital, because as we saw on Candid News' latest bombshell about the revenue collection contract, where anything over $7 million a month collected, whether it's insurance payments, Medicare, Medicaid, MIP, or even self-pay, the revenue collection people get a percentage of it to the tune of about $4 million a year.
I haven't seen an update yet, and I'm wondering, is that best practices, or is that something of an anomaly given to them?
That's an anomaly, because normally the way collection services work, they get a percentage of what they collect. Because I remember another company that had the collection contract back in, oh God, I can't even remember, late 90s, early 2000s, and they dropped it because the administration was leaning on them to not call these people. And they're like, hey, you know, if you don't want us to call these people, how are we going to get paid, you know? So, you know, they've had previous contracts in the past where they only got paid on what they collected. There's no reason why this contract should be getting a percentage of tax garnishments, insurance payments, Medicare payments, Medicaid payments, MIP payments, or even voluntary self-pay. I mean, this is ridiculous.
That's not collections.
No, that's not collections. That's harvesting.
Right.
You know, and I'm obviously going to be doing another FOIA. I'm picking up my FOIAs tomorrow that the governor, that the administration is finally releasing after they got an order from the court to do so. So I'll be picking that up, and I'll be dropping this new one off. But it goes back to, for decades, I mean, ever since we became when I say independent, ever since government of Guam existed, we've been running Guam Memorial Hospital like a giant ATM machine for the party in power. And we have to stop that, because we can no longer afford to have the hospital being run ragged. I mean, after a month, and I think I did about a year and a half of looking at the checkbooks, and I got just so disgusted when I looked at what they were spending money on. And a large amount of that money has nothing to do with health care. I guarantee you that. And until we get a receiver in there to take the politics out of it, because remember, in 2018, when Lou was questioned on appointing a receiver, because I'd been raising a stink, and Frank again picked up the torch, she said that there was no need for a receiver. She was going to appoint the best and brightest. And we ended up with a health benefits manager from United Airlines instead of a licensed professional hospital administrator with a verifiable track record. And we see the result today. I think the first time we heard about renovating Guam Memorial, the number was 175. I testified against that bill in
is that renovating or replacing?
Renovating.
Okay.
It was $175 million to renovate and upgrade, and Governor Calvo wanted to float a bond to raise $170 million. I testified against it on the basis of, you know, we don't maintain what just gave us millions of dollars worth of medical equipment and they certified it and got it inspected and everything when they built a new naval hospital. And what we do, we put it in a room and let it rot. You know, so that's why I was testifying against the bill at that time, because we were following Puerto Rico over the financial cliff on a per capita debt basis. We're almost at the level where Puerto Rico had to go to Washington, D.C., hat in hand, and ask Obama to spank us and put someone in charge of our government finances because we know not what we do. And now 6 years later, they're on the verge of coming out, but they took one hell of a haircut during their federal administration. So that's why I fight these battles. I don't want to see a federal administrator get appointed for government of Guam totally, although I'm okay with the receiver being put in charge of Guam Memorial Hospital, because in the 15 years I've been a community advocate, that hospital has gone from bad to worse. And we haven't seen any effort whatsoever by this administration to make things better. And the Army Corps report lays it open. $21 million extends the useful life of this building to the point where we can build a new building, and it will also address all the concerns that will lead to accreditation. It's right there on page 30. What did we do? We sent $20 million to the Guam Visitors Bureau for a electronic experience at EPOW, of which they've spent, according to Carl Gutierrez, I think, on the Ray Show, they spent $6.5 million providing tests for returning tourists going back to Japan and Korea. So we don't even have $20 million for that. But, God forbid we actually spend $20 million to fix the roof, to replace the panel, and to fix the elevators, which were three of the biggies in the Army Corps. And that was $21 million, plus addressing a whole host of other issues. But in the meantime, this is going to get bogged down. I mean, have you seen that waste energy plant down there in Santa Rita?
No.
Yeah, because public opposition.
Yeah. Well, you have a part of that. Yeah, I had a part of that. That's why I know that there's going to be, we already saw it in the testimonies last Wednesday. The governor tried to come in there and buy these people, but the people want their land. They don't want the money. They want the land to give it to their children and grandchildren, because their children and their grandchildren are probably going to end up leaving Guam because they don't have land. They can't afford to buy or build a house. That's what that 92-year-old woman testified about. She wants to give the land to her grandchildren so they can stay on Guam. Well, being campaign season, it remains to see if this sleight of hand misdirection actually backfired on the governor in making a big hay out of these landowners and attempting to appease them in a way that they weren't going for. We'll see what happens.
What you guys have been doing here is keeping our voters focused on the bigger pictures that, for some reason, media doesn't want to cover.
Nope.
And, there used to be, we don't have any Bernsteins and Woodwards here, but I remember when I worked in media back in the 70s, we had a managing editor. Gannett just bought Pacific Daily News. They sent a managing editor out, and he basically ran us through their version of what was journalism. And I remember when I applied for a job on the Tulsa Tribune, and I took my string book. A string book is all the articles you've written and all the photos you've taken. And I took it to the Tulsa Tribune, and they were blown away at the quality of work that I was showing them. But that went back to the strict journalistic standards that were taught me and enforced at the Pacific Daily News at the time Gannett first took over. And now when we look at the fact that we don't have editorials anymore, we basically have rewritten press releases. Nobody does any investigative work. It appears that Troy Torres and I are the only ones doing investigative work. And we're not even mainstream media.
Now, while you're on the phone, I just want to ask a question about your incarceration incident because of that meeting at the hotel. Which hotel was that again? The Hyatt Regency. Have they released a synopsis or any kind of documentation or summary of that meeting yet? It's been a number of weeks now.
Well, I'm picking it up tomorrow. So as soon as I get it picked up tomorrow, I will forward copies to you and Daryl on the relevant parts, and maybe we can shine a little light on that as we get into the final strokes on the campaign season. Because I dragged their feet long enough and to the point where I had to go and get a judge order to release it. I still haven't been able to get my police report yet, even though. So, you know, I mean,
so
it's been released.
It's not a campaign. It wasn't a campaign ploy, right? Getting yourself in the newspaper, getting yourself arrested. It really happened?
Let's walk through the...
No.
Here's the sequence. I got a tip from Ray Gibson because someone tipped him off. So I went to Guam Memorial Hospital. I went to the front office. I asked the girl behind the desk, I'm here for the GMH construction planning meeting. She told me, that meeting, the planning meeting is down at the Hyatt. I said, well, it's 10 minutes to 8. Could you call down there and let them know I am coming and not to start without me? I'll be there in 10 minutes or less, GMH to the Hyatt, straight shot. I get to the Hyatt, I walk in, I sign in, I pick up my packet, I get a cup of coffee, I'm sitting there for an hour while they were having a problem with their projector. So the people from HDR were trying to get their projector working with the laptop. They were having a problem. And so the head of
Are you
HDR
saying that
over.
GMH has a projection problem?
No, the consultants have a projection problem.
Got it.
Well, they also have a projection problem, but that's another FOIA.
All right. Okay. All right. I'm sorry.
But,
go ahead.
Here, an hour and a half, I'm sitting there drinking coffee and talking with the consultants who are bragging about the fact that they are the largest designers, project managers, and constructors of healthcare facilities in North America. And I went onto their website. She showed me, go to the website. I go to the website. While I'm sitting there talking, I'm looking at the website, and I'm looking at all these hospitals and treatment facilities and, urgent care clinics and medical clinics, pages and pages of them. So it lends credibility to what she said. Now, the part that I found interesting is that Cindy Hansen issues a press release where I barged into a meeting. I've been there for an hour and a half. That's hardly barging. I signed in. I picked up a packet. I was talking with the consultants. That's not barging into a meeting. That's sitting there bored out of my tears because these high-paid consultants couldn't get a laptop to work with a digital projector.
Wow.
That was the part there. And then Lillian Posadas walks in, takes a look at me, and then she turns around, walks out. I didn't think anything of it. And then I'd say 15 minutes later, here comes legal counsel, who wasn't there for the hour and a half I'd been sitting there. Suddenly comes in, wants to talk to me outside.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so
okay.
Then, my police arrest report is released before the end of the day, and it's all over social media, but I can't get a copy of my arrest report unless I retain an attorney. But it's flying all over social media.
Right. Somebody released it.
And then the governor called in from Washington, D.C. to comment on a Post story about my arrest.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the interview that's the quote they got. It was a call-in. Oh, interesting. Yeah,
she called them. So it's interesting that in spite of all these things that the governor claimed she was doing in Washington, D.C., she felt it more important to not meet with all these dignitaries and to take time to go out and do an interview with the Post on how Ken's appearance at this meeting jeopardizes Guam's credit rating, or God knows what she was leading with. But
it's not what she said, it's what she didn't say. And she didn't say that Ken Leon Guerrero is important to me enough to call into the Post to make a quote about what just happened. That tells me a lot. That tells all of us a lot, that what you're doing is not only getting attention, it's creating a need to mitigate, to scramble, to call in. And what was the quote she made again? That you had caused a ruckus as well, right?
Yeah, I had barged in and caused a ruckus. Well, the only ruckus was when the guys were trying to drag me out with a fast perp walk, my pants fell down.
Oh, boy.
And I tripped over my pants, and they're telling me to get up. I have my hands cuffed behind my back. I'm laying on my stomach, and my pants are around my knees, and they're telling me to get up. That was the ruckus that they went on ad nauseum about.
Well, just getting back to your letter here, that what I really appreciated is that you laid out, I think, whether or not you agree with the hospital, just the fact that it takes time to build something of this magnitude, of this size and importance. 3 years is not something to say you'll have up and running unless you already have add water and boom, instant hospital. It does sound like a very lofty, idealistic type of timeline. How that is that nobody has even questioned her on that timeline that I've seen, except for you, is curious as well. But I really appreciate that you made an analogy to Simon Sanchez High School, something that does not have the degree of expertise needed as far as personnel and administration and build-up, and that can even get done in 10 years. And it's just a structure.
All we have to do is look at the museum. The museum, I think from the time they authorized it to the time they started construction, it was authorized during the Camacho administration. They finished it at the end of the Calvo administration. So we're looking at somewhere around 10 years for that structure, and there was no opposition. There were no land issues. There were no infrastructure issues like there are on Route 15. Because I remember listening to Glenn Leon Guerrero testify that it cost $1 million a mile to resurface a village road. Well, if it's $1 million a mile to resurface a village road, how much is it going to cost to widen Route 15 from Gigo to Route 10, and then, basically create a 5-lane or a 4-lane, because right now it's 2 lanes.
Yeah.
You can't run ambulances on the 2 lanes.
I'm a curious guy, Ken. So every time you mention something that I've had a curiosity about, I'm going to have to ask, and I hope you have the answer to this. That back road, is that supposed to be managed by Gov Guam or the military? I've heard 2 different things on it.
Government of Guam.
Okay. Was it ever managed by the military itself?
It was until the government of Guam was formed by the Organic Act.
Oh.
When you look at the Organic Act, there's a list of real estate assets that are turned over to government of Guam. And one of the assets listed is a listing of all the different routed roads that previously were under the supervision and management of the naval government. But when you look at the Organic Act, there's a list of buildings, facilities, properties, and roads that are turned over to government of Guam.
So Route 3 was done pretty well and pretty quickly. Was that a Gov Guam project or the Anderson
No, that was federal. That was a federal project.
Okay.
And Route 5, up there by where I live, that's going to be a split project. Government of Guam federal, because these are improving the infrastructure for the military. So that's the justification for the federal funding of the improvements of Route 3.
Got it.
But when we look at Kamuni, that's not coming out of federal money. That's coming out of, the gas money, and maybe some of it's federal. I don't know. I haven't really looked at that.
Let me jump in here for a moment. Let me jump in here for a moment. For years, Guam has been receiving annually a share of infrastructure funds that go to all states and territories for federal highway development. There was, some years back, there was a hold put on expending money because of a question of how the funds were being used. So they had built up over the years. And then they were released, and so they could work on projects such as widening Route 3. But Route 3 in particular was not turned over to the government of Guam. In order to resurface it, they had to get permission because it was attached to the adjacent federal lands, going from GRMC all the way up to Route 9. That's actually still federal land. So Gov Guam got the easement to improve it, and spend the federal funds on it. Same thing with Route 5, but those could be coming out of not just federal highway funds, but could be coming out of build-up funds because it's a haul road for Naval Mag. And that's the kind of thing. The back road to Anderson, Route 15, is a numbered route which is eligible for the federal funds, highway funds, but that widening has been, that was originally a haul road that was an alternate to Marine Drive.
It still borders military land too,
right? But that is, it was built as a haul road back way to Anderson, but because they had the two airfields in the north and the one in central all active at the same time. So, but that is actually a numbered route, Gov Guam. Now, Marine Drive is a Gov Guam road. However, there is a federal easement on it for its utilities, and that's why the helicopters fly over it, because it is retained for federal use from the front gate of Naval Station to the front gate of Anderson.
All right.
Yeah, didn't the federal funds, didn't they use federal funds to redo the bridges there in Agania?
And those were from the build-up funds.
Yeah, the
build-up monies.
Yeah.
Well, Ken, thanks for calling in and talking about this letter and give us a lot more detail about what happened that day that you were incarcerated for attending a meeting.
Well, as soon as I pick up my FOIA, I will copy you on this good stuff.
Great. All right. Have a great day. Thanks for calling in again.
All right.
You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. We're going to the 7th inning stretch. I see you, another Joe in the green room. Don't go away. More Tall Tales after this.
I'm Dr. Sama Bini Young. I've served as a senator and director of labor. I'm also an entrepreneur and educator. As your senator, I will prioritize the training and education of students and workers to support the rebuilding of our economy. I understand our community's needs for affordable living and housing, and the need for aggressive drug enforcement to stop its serious impact. And there's the need for smarter and smaller government, like a part-time legislature that works for Guam and having more efficient GovGuam departments. Please support me with one of your votes for senator to work for you on these issues. I'm Dr. Sama Bini Young.
Paid for by friends of Sama Bini Young, Gina Ramos, Treasurer.
Half a day. I'm Bisho Mendiola, and I'm running for senator to promote lower cost of living, increase our food security, and ignite new economic sector development. I will put to work my fresh ideas, my experience as a small business owner to create legislation that removes the red tape on our economic growth. I want to pave the way to a prosperous, wealthy, and self-sustainable island community. I'm Bisho Mendiola, number 13 on the Republican ballot, and I approve this message.
Wrigley Field, 7th inning stretch. 2 more innings to go before the end of today's episode of Tall Tales. We have another Joe in the green room, but another Joe, please hold on a little bit longer because what you want to talk about, I'm going to get into next. That's on the card, and this is Tim Rohr's letter to the editor about the pro-abortion doctors on Guam. And this one I titled Pro-Abortion Doctors on Guam versus Their Own Shadow. Looking at data, abortion doctors have nothing to fear on Guam. Per an October 21st news story in this publication, and that's the Guam Daily Post, quote, lawyers for 2 Hawaii-based doctors have filed their answer to the brief submitted by the Office of the Attorney General in the ongoing appeal of an injunction placed on Guam's in-person consultation mandate for abortions. From the story, it appears that Hawaii-based doctors have nothing to support their answer, other than Guam is a scary place. Quote, the stigma surrounding abortion on island discourages even supportive doctors from incorporating such services into their practice. The doctors had attempted to fly to Guam to provide services in person, but due to the fear other physicians had of being associated with them, could not find a clinical site. In light of actual data, the position of said doctors is absurd. Guam overwhelmingly supports abortion, and here are just a few facts. Recently, the legislature reported receiving more than 800 testimonies relative to the pending Heartbeat Act, with only 127 in favor and 678 opposed. The Heartbeat Act would ban doctors from performing abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected. 2. Relative to an Americans United for Life study in 2008, Guam for decades was the easiest place in the nation to procure an abortion due to both its lack of regulation and the absolute absence of enforcement of what little regulation there was. 3. Pursuant to numbers proffered by the late Senator Elizabeth Areola in 1990 and later supported by data extracted from abortion reports, Guam for at least 3 decades averaged approximately 2 abortions per day, with more than 2/3 of the mothers identifying their ethnicity as Chamorro. Among the many hard-fought battles backed by the Esperanza Project, which eventually saw 8 bills enacted into law over an 8-year period, it took nearly 5 years to get legislation requiring women to know the risks and options to abortion, and it took more than 4 years to get our legislature to criminalize the harming or killing of an unborn child in an act of violence against the mother, something much of the rest of the nation had already done. Guam voters in 2018 easily bypassed 2 historically pro-life candidates for governor, and that would be Dennis Rodriguez Jr. and Frank Uggan Jr. Frank Uggan Jr., the author of the Infant Right to Life Act, which passed into law, to which then Citizen Lulian Guerrero testified against. And they voted into office Guam's most public, virulent, and vociferous proponent of abortion. 6. In the recent Democratic primary, Guam voters again bypassed another pro-life candidate, Michael San Nicolas, and voted for the incumbent Lulian Guerrero, who is not only a radical proponent of abortion, but has spent tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars in an effort to procure abortionists to come to Guam. 7. 2 doctors from one of Guam's well-known clinics, Dr. Bordallo and Dr. Bez Asagua Manyagu, have been out on the front lines of abortion rights. In 2013, both doctors submitted testimony opposing legislation requiring normal medical care for a child who survived a failed abortion, and that's the Infant Born Alive Act. Most recently, Dr. Bez has submitted more than 1 letter to local papers urging liberal access to abortion, and Dr. Bordallo testified against the Heartbeat Act. One wonders why Sagua Manyagu would not want to host the Hawaii doctors, since 2 of its most prominent doctors very publicly support abortion. In fact, pursuant to a recent statement by Dr. Samir Ambrali, every doctor registered with the Guam Medical Society would apparently welcome abortion providers. Quote, "We believe that a pregnant woman should always have a choice between continuing the stigma surrounding abortion, a choice between continuing the pregnancy or terminating it. So, a note to the Hawaii doctors and their lawyers. There is nothing to fear. Given the facts, Guam welcomes you, even if it means the continued extermination of the Chamorro, which the late Senator Areola warned." And they quote, "Where are the lives that we are going to protect and preserve? Here we go talking about indigenous rights and self-determination. What good is all that if we don't have our followers to follow and enjoy the fruits of our labor, of this generation's labor, of your labor, my labor, to fix this island and have autonomous rights to govern our people?" And that's from Tim Rohr. That quote was the late Senator Areola, who questioned, what's the use of protecting our indigenous rights protecting our self-determination, protecting our culture, but we're just aborting them before they're even born.
Mm-hmm.
So this dog and pony show that these doctors are putting on here on the island about abortion rights can simply be rectified by providing abortions. But why aren't they? Nothing's holding them back. The facts don't tell them otherwise. The fear-mongering propaganda that the church rules the whole island is false, because we've even seen statistics show that even Catholics are procuring abortions here on Guam. So what is their agenda? That's a big question. In the green room is another Joe who wants to talk about a pro-life rally this Friday in the bill. I'm assuming the heartbeat bill that's in legislation session right now.
Yep. So this Friday, over across from ITC building, there's going to be a pro-life rally. What's it called? I think Chain of Life.
Uh-huh.
Look at the flyer again. Life Chain. And so it's going to start at 4:15. Probably better be there around 4 o'clock. And then the go time is go at 4:15. Prayer time at 4:30 and up to 5:30, I think. So I wanted to. So it's a little bit of a service public announcement there for this coming Friday, the 28th of October. The thing about abortion, I have to comment on Mr. Burr. All right, so regarding Bell Ariela's law, Senator Ariela's law, it really just takes the AG to dissolve the injunction, right? So you have to vote for an AG that agrees on to dissolve the injunction on on Public Law 20-134. That's all it takes.
Yeah, that's all it takes for the legal measure, but let me just do a little bit of foresight or fortune telling here. The law gets the lifting of the injunction happens, the law is put into place, and let's see, right now only telemedicine abortions are occurring on Guam. We know that because they're being reported. I think probably at least 20 or more have been procured here on Guam since the beginning of the year, which is a lower number than the hundreds previous years when the abortion doctors were here. However, that law could always be overturned because we have people running for Senate and senators who want to wash their hands of the situation and place this subject or this matter in the hands of voters through a plebiscite or through what do they call it, Daryl? Public. When you put when the senators decide they don't want say that again.
Referendum.
There you go. That's the word. So I don't think the point is the legal matters. I don't think it has to do with laws. Nothing's stopping any of these pro-abortionist doctors here on Guam already from performing abortions. They just won't for some reason, and it's a good question to ask why they won't. There's nothing.
There's an alliance to there's under an umbrella, overall liberal Democrat. Far left Democrat.
It doesn't matter because there's plenty of Republicans that also procure abortions and also will not will also ask for exceptions in abortion. The fact of the matter is, and this is what Tim Rohr does in this letter, he doesn't. He's not blaming the doctors. They're not the ones that are getting the abortions. He's not blaming even abortion in the sense of what it does. We are the ones that are doing it. We are the ones that are not stopping it, talking about it. We're not even being honest about what an abortion is. We keep hearing.
That's why we need more priests.
We have enough priests.
More priests.
I think
priests come out and spread the word to the people about the truth and about what this is. This is a killing of a human being. You put that in perspective.
There's a lot to it, and I think what I've seen. On social media and other places, what I've seen where conversion happens, where people understand what abortion is when they see an abortion. We've seen countless testimonies of people who were very pro-abortion who converted themselves because they actually were involved in an abortion, like Abby Johnson, for one, who was a celebrated, award-winning director of a Planned Parenthood. She won one for the nation one year, and the next year she quit because she was actually involved in the abortion at the clinic and understood what she was doing. She was terminating the life. She was killing the life of a child. She didn't want to participate anymore when she saw the ultrasound version of what was happening. When people actually see the effects, the after effects of what happens after the abortion is performed, where you have not just a lifeless body, a body with limbs that are detached from its body, because that's the way they have to remove this innocent, helpless child from the womb. And that's what informed consent is about. I have an article that came out, or people have read today, about the ACLU, saying that our informed consent law hampers abortions or targets, and they connect it to well, we don't have informed consent for people getting open heart surgery. Well, open heart surgery doesn't kill a person, in the sense that that's what its intention is. So we're not even honest about what's going on. So I don't think it has to do with religion, because we are a majority religious island. I don't think it has to do with anything else but the truth. And the truth of the matter is, we have abortion on Guam. It's legal. We have pro-abortion doctors who testify against pro-life measures, but they refuse to do abortions on Guam. Why? Tell the people why you won't do it, and maybe the honesty will come out.
Yeah. Can I mention one thing before
Go ahead.
you all go to break?
Yeah.
All right. So session started for this month of October at the 36th Guam Legislature, and Bill 291-36, the Guam Heartbeat Act of 2022, is still in committee, in the Health Committee, and there has to be 7 senators signing off for the Bill 291-36 to be reported out of committee, for it to be for it to go to the committee rules, then to the session to be debated and voted on. But it's stuck in the committee. As you know, I don't know if it's accurate, but I think I heard there are 5 senators who voted in favor of reporting this bill out of committee. Speaker Therese Terlahi, Senator Chris Duenas, Della Taitigui, Joanne Brown, and there's one more I can't think of. I apologize. But anyway, so there are 4 that still need to be. They can vote for it to be reported out of committee. Would be Vice Speaker Tina Munoz Barnes.
Well, the bottom line is nobody is doing any action on it. Not even the author, not even the co-authors. And I know that someone, I think it was Senator James Moylan this morning, said that traditionally the author of the bill is the one who calls for it to be pulled out. Daryl can speak to that.
Yeah, but buck tradition. This is not about tradition. This is about saving babies. It's campaign time.
I know it's campaign time, but my goodness, if we're talking about a bill that's going to save lives, why are we hemming and hawing over tradition?
Political careers.
It's really, sorry, another Joe. Go ahead. I talked over you. Go ahead.
Okay. So if we're all in agreement, then all of us who are pro-life supporters, anti-abortion pro-life supporters, going to request for the senators of the Health Committee to sign off their vote to sign in favor of reporting this report out of committee and allowing it to go to committee on rules, and then the next step would be for it to go to the session floor to be debated and to be passed into law. Yeah,
that's the process under the Joe, and I hope somebody does listen in, and somebody in legislature, and especially the co-authors and the author, listen to that. I want to thank you for your call, and have a great afternoon. Somebody have some courage. You wrote your names to this bill. Pull it out, or say something, or make us think about it. I know that election's coming up in 2 weeks, but do you really want to be silent about this? I mean, I don't think this bill is going to pass because of the other people in legislature who seem to think that abortion doesn't affect or doesn't terminate the life of a helpless, innocent human. It's all about a political posturing. But for at least put it to the vote so that we can see how you voted. Don't wait until after the election.
perhaps we should simply take their silence as being their
There
action,
you go.
and just make the assumption that they are not.
Was the bill
sincere.
authored knowing that
They're not sincere?
It would never go to a vote, and we're just going to talk about it, but we're not going to even do the hard work to make it go to a vote.
Or maybe it was offered to virtue signal, and then they didn't want to go the distance.
According to the facts that Tim Roy laid out, more than likely it's virtue signaling, because the majority of people maybe don't even care or don't even understand what's going on. I mean, we have doctors who can perform here in Guam, but they refuse to. I want to know why. You listen to Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. We're going to the home stretch. Churchill Downs. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more.
We're already Pica's best radio station,
and we want to keep it that way. Voting for Pica's best radio station is on and underway. If you've already voted for the point, thank you. If not, there's still time to get yours in. We're honored that many of you have nominated us again, and we'll keep looking for ways to keep you informed, up to date, and entertained. Fox News, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie and all the great talk shows from around the USA. Tell a friend and share your votes with all the point's super advertisers. Thanks from all the stations of Choice Broadcasting.
Reggae in Paradise. Let's vibe out to some of the hottest Irie vibes on all your playlists. Join the vibes on November 19th at Paseo Stadium. It's on a Saturday, and we have an amazing lineup of artists. Mixed Plate, Bubba B, Fantasia, The John Dank Show, Kimmy A. Minor, Liquid Jordy, High Water, and Rebel Sojas.
Life is on a spaceship.
Get your tickets now at guamtime.net. What are you waiting for? Presenting sponsors, big thanks to Riga Royal, IT&E, White Claw, GVB, Gasolina, Linda's Diner, and Empire Media and Entertainment. Saturday, November 19th, Reggae in Paradise. We'll see you there.
The home stretch, Churchill Downs. We have less than 10 minutes to go before the end of this episode. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. Don't forget, there's only a couple more days, if not one more day left of voting for Pica's Best 2022. And we, The Point, are looking for your support to vote us in again. A repeat, we are the incumbent of the best radio station, Pica's Best radio station for 2021. Also, as well, we have our own Ray Gibson, who was nominated for Best Radio Personality, along with our other DJs here in our family of broadcasters, Daryl Lizama, Albert Wan, and Kyle Mandapat, who have been nominated as well. So, Pica's Best 2022, don't forget to vote. Okay, I'm going to stay on this topic and talk about ACLU. We have less than,
just to break in for a moment, because actually there was a caller, and he didn't want to come on the air because the example was so personal. But he wanted to he asked me if I could bring this forward to the audience. And that was that in his family, he had to go through the ordeal of a family member having an abortion and then going to, to bury the remains.
Oh, interesting.
And it was a fully formed human. And it just broke his heart. And this is not just his reality. It's a reality of so many people. And that's what we're talking about here. About, is there a government policy for making sure that young humans, babies, are cared for at point of birth, whether that delivery is done as an intended abortion or not?
Well, that
Are we carrying this out?
That law is in effect. Is it being enforced? Is what you're asking?
And are people thinking about this, or they're just going to go ahead and let it ride, and let the issue ride, and not try to position the community to not be to go through this kind of an ordeal themselves?
Well, we know we know that here on Guam that we're very good at keeping silent, even though something atrocious has happened in front of us. But we also know that we are very vocal about a lot of things. A lot of things that we're vocal about are abused children, sexual abuse, victims of abuse, victims of violence. And we look at that and go, that's incredibly important. But one of the most violent actions that we allow and condone and are silent about on Guam is the violence of a child's life being taken from them in the womb.
Hence, elections every 2 years.
But see, this is not even an election issue. This is an issue of life. Do we need to have an election to talk about whether or not somebody who is over the age of 80 has a quality of life situation that we want to endure or keep paying for their medical costs? That would be absurd. But the absurd happens every day. The absurd is happening right now in the legislature, where the Heartbeat Act can't even be brought to the floor for a vote.
That's what I'm talking about.
Come on, people. Come on, legislators, senators. There's some of you who aren't running for office anymore. Do you have the courage to bring it up for a vote so that we can see your yes vote or your no vote? You don't have to support the bill. Lobby for it to be brought to the floor. Have some courage.
And make everyone who was elected show by their public vote how they stand on this issue as public officials.
It's amazing that we even have to define a life, the smallest, most innocent life, by their heartbeat. We don't go around walking around saying, prove to me that you're human. Can I hear your heartbeat? You know, we already know what a human is. We don't have to take a DNA test to tell people who a human is or not. When that sperm hits the egg, it doesn't create anything else but a human, if it's a human mother and a human father.
And on the flip side, there are services we can extend, we can improve to support women who are in this situation.
Absolutely, and they are out there.
And we can, as a community, catch these.
Let me tell you right now,
whose mothers are not prepared to be mothers.
Tobias called in the other day because he was talking about Safe Haven.
Yes.
One of those institutions is a private, non-government institution that not only helps women and families that are expecting, mothers and fathers who are expecting, to help them along the way, whether they have everything together or not, whether they have all the necessary items or not, whether they have all the skills and the knowledge of what to expect. But they also counsel or help out those who are questioning whether or not they want to abort or not, or have this child, or even give it for adoption. This is a service that could happen everywhere. But why is that not considered pro-choice? Why is pro-choice always tagged on to the choice of death? If you ask me, Safe Haven is the most pro-life, pro-choice entity out there right now, because they give people a positive choice.
A real choice.
A real choice. The ACLU wants to take away that choice by getting rid of informed consent, which is the law. They don't want mothers to know what an abortion really is. They do not. Because if that happens, then the abortion doesn't happen. More than often, people, when they find out what it is that's going to be done on them, they say no. We have we're coming up at the end of the hour. I have one more day, Daryl, before.
No, you're going to be over here.
I know,
I'm the one that's got one more day.
I want to go out on a really great note. So, please tune in tomorrow. Let's get some good news. Let's get some good news that somebody decided to really pull the Heartbeat Act out from behind the walls and be put into session to be voted on. I don't care how it goes. I just want to know these senators, how they vote and how they're going to represent us, how they're going to represent the future of this island, the future of the indigenous people, the future of all people here on this island, which begins at conception, which begins in the womb.
And in some sense, begins with your getting involved and voting.
There you go. Thank you very much, Daryl. You're listening to Tall Tales. Today's episode is over, but fear not, we'll be back tomorrow with more Tall Tales at 4 o'clock. Have a great evening. Thank you for listening. And, as always, button pushing, Jose. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A pivotal debate in Pennsylvania. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Democratic Senate candidate John Fetterman and Republican Mehmet Oz will share the stage tonight for one of the most highly anticipated debates of the midterm elections.
Oz and Fetterman will meet in Harrisburg for what may be their one and only face-to-face exchange on issues. Fetterman's camp questioning if Oz knows enough on what concerns Pennsylvanians. Oz has lived many years in New Jersey. Oz has hit often on Fetterman's health. Fitness to serve has become an issue since Fetterman suffered a stroke in May. Most polls have the race well within the margin of error, which means performances tonight could sway undecideds. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
The two men are vying for Pennsylvania's open U.S. Senate seat. Last night, Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis faced off against Democrat Charlie Crist in their only scheduled debate. Crist challenging the governor to make a pledge to Floridians.
Why don't you look in the eyes of the people of the state of Florida and say to them, if you're reelected, you will serve a full 4-year term as governor, yes or no?
DeSantis sidestepping the question.
I know that Charlie's interested in talking about 2024 and Joe Biden, but I just want to make things very, very clear. The only worn-out old donkey I'm looking to put out to pasture is Charlie Crist.
The debate courtesy of WPEC Sinclair Broadcast Group. Questions swirling around about the gunman identified as 19-year-old Orlando Harris, who went to his old high school in South St. Louis yesterday and shot and killed 2 people and wounded 7. Police Chief Michael Sack praising his officers.
I can't say enough how well the officers did, getting there on scene as quickly as they did, making entry, locating the suspect.
Sack won't say how Harris got into the school after first being deterred by locked doors. America's listening to Fox News.
Connect to Fox News Audio on the Fox News app. Listen to hear your favorite hosts like Brian Kilmeade, Jimmy Fallon, and Guy Benson standing up for what's right, live and via podcast. Just click listen, then swipe right and hear the latest news updates on your time.